Most women would have screamed. She didn't. She simply stared at the newborn silent as ash, while her fingers trembled around the edge of her teacup. The baby wrapped in soft ivory cotton was fresh from the hospital eyes barely open. But those eyes, they were hers. Not like hers. Exactly hers. The same deep-set shape. The same shade of gray-blue that people once whispered about behind her back, calling her the woman with the haunted gaze. And yet this baby was not supposed to be hers in any way. This baby was her son's. Her son's baby with the woman he married in a rush 2 years ago. The woman who had shown up at their family dinner table like a shadow no one invited. Her name was Maya. Small, polite, unassuming. She smiled too much, laughed too easily, and never quite met your eyes. Her presence was like fog, hard to touch, harder to read. But what mother doesn't try to give her son space? Especially after the death of her husband, especially when grief was still stitched under her skin like a hidden lining. She tried. She let her son go. And when he came home with Maya, when he said, "Mom, I'm marrying her," she smiled. She smiled even though her gut whispered, "Not this one. This one hides." And hide she did. Maya never stayed too long. She declined family photos. She backed out of baby showers, claiming migraines, exhaustion, stress. She never once showed her pregnant belly. Not to friends, not to family, not even to her mother-in-law. "I'm just private," Maya had said, giggling, touching her stomach protectively. "Don't take it personally." But you tell me, how does a woman hide an entire pregnancy? How does a family live under one roof, pass each other in the hallway, share rice and silence and secrets, and still not notice the swelling beneath a woman's clothes? Was she wrapping herself, starving herself, or was the entire family just too tired to see? You might be thinking, it's not possible. Someone had to notice. But no, some families don't talk. Some women grow invisible. And sometimes truth only knocks once you're too tired to answer the door. The baby was born last Friday. Maya called from the hospital. No labor announcement, no due date, just, "He's here, you can come if you want." And like a fool, the grandmother went. She walked into that sterile hospital room and saw her son holding the baby. He looked nervous, pale. Not elated, something closer to conflicted, but he smiled the way people smile when they're trying not to scream. Maya lay in bed, flushed, sweaty, beaming. Her face said victory. And the baby? The baby had those eyes. "I thought we'd name him Elias," Maya said casually, sipping from a pink hospital cup. "Your husband's middle name, right? It's kind of poetic, don't you think?" Poetic, as if memory could be bought with naming rights. As if she didn't just rewrite history with that one choice. As if it wasn't manipulative controlling a statement. And you, reader, do you know what it feels like to have the breath stolen from your chest? Not with violence, but with precision. With a whisper, disguised as a gift. Because that's what Maya did. She gave her a baby with her eyes and her dead husband's name. That's not a gift, that's a ghost reborn. And still she said nothing. She cradled the child in shaking hands. Maya watched, pleased, and the son sat frozen in the corner like a boy who'd broken something he couldn't fix. There was no joy in that room, only performance, like actors at the final curtain waiting for applause that wouldn't come. Later that night, she stood alone in her kitchen. The photo of her husband stared at her from the wall. Elias, strong and sharp-eyed with a kindness people rarely remembered until it was too late. The man who'd warned her once, "Pay attention to what people don't say. That's where the truth lives." And it hit her then, the silences, the missing months, the deflection. That baby wasn't just Maya's secret. It was everyone's. That night she didn't sleep. The walls of the house, once so familiar, had turned foreign, even sinister. Each room held a memory, and now each memory tasted sour. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway like accusations, like betrayal had stitched itself into the carpet. She sat at the dining table until the moon was high, her fingers tracing the grooves in the wood that her husband carved when they were young and foolish and in love. She remembered the night she brought their son home from the hospital. His fingers were so small. He had her eyes even then. But now, so did this child who Maya claimed was her son's. She wanted to believe it. She needed to believe it. But something inside her twisted. Call it instinct. Call it grief dressed in suspicion. Call it the knowing that only mothers possess the deep primal wisdom that hums beneath the bones when something is wrong. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt rage so clean, so sharp, that it doesn't scream, it whispers? That's what she felt as she sat in silence, her tea gone cold, her spine straightening. The next morning, her son came alone. He knocked once, then let himself in like he used to when he was a teenager before Maya, before the wall grew between them, brick by resentful brick. He stood there in the living room, his face tired, his shoulders slumped like someone had taken the wind from his sails. She didn't greet him. She didn't hug him. She just asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He blinked, swallowed hard. "We were trying to be careful. You know how early losses run in Maya's family. She didn't want to get her hopes up." A lie? Not the kind that screams, the kind that sighs, that curls into itself like smoke. "And the eyes," she said softly. He didn't answer. "I'm not imagining it." She continued, her voice calm, almost kind. "That baby looks more like me than you ever did. And I know what that means." His face crumpled. "I didn't know," he muttered. "Not at first. I swear to God, Mom, I thought she told me it was mine. She told me it was ours." She studied him carefully. The guilt was there, raw, real. But guilt is not the same as innocence. "So when did you find out?" "A few months ago. Before the baby shower." He nodded. "You still let me buy her a crib?" His voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. What would you do, reader? If your only child sat before you confessing to cowardice, if the woman who married him had lied with such skill, such grace, that even now she played the victim, would you scream? Would you throw something? Or would you like her simply rise, walk to the window, and stare out at a garden where nothing has bloomed since the funeral? "I think she did it on purpose," he whispered. "The donor, whoever he was. She picked someone that looked like..." He stopped himself. "Like your father?" she said coldly. He nodded. "She wanted to keep me. She thought if the baby looked like you, like him, I wouldn't leave. A calculated pregnancy, a curated bloodline. This wasn't just deception. It was psychological warfare in lace and lip gloss. I can't even look at the kid," he admitted, voice raw. "I try, but every time it's like I'm looking at a stranger, like I'm looking at you, but not." And there it was, the truth underneath the truth. He wasn't just angry at Maya. He was angry at her, his mother. The one who had never left, the one who had never needed to manipulate him because her love was steady, quiet, unshiny. The resentment had been brewing for years. Maybe he felt smothered. Maybe he blamed her for staying strong after the funeral instead of falling apart like he did. Maybe Maya was his rebellion and this baby was the weapon. She turned away from the window. "I want to see the birth certificate," she said simply, "and a paternity test." His eyes widened. "Maya won't go for that." "I'm not asking her. I'm telling you. You bring me the truth or you stop bringing that child into my home." He flinched. She didn't care. "Let me ask you again. What do you do when someone steals your story and rewrites it with themselves at the center? You don't scream. You don't beg. You build a new ending." And in that moment, with the sun slicing through the window like a blade, she decided if Maya wanted war dressed as motherhood, she picked the wrong woman to fight. 2 weeks passed, 2 long, coiled weeks where no one called, no one visited, and silence stretched between houses like a noose waiting to tighten. She didn't chase it. She didn't check in. She didn't ask for photos of the baby, nor did she offer congratulations. Let them sit with the weight of it. Let the stillness eat at their nerves. She busied herself with her garden. The roses hadn't bloomed in 3 seasons. Drought, grief, and neglect will do that, but she dug her hands into the soil anyway, fingers scraping dirt as if clawing through time. She found a photo in the attic one afternoon. Her husband holding their newborn son, his face lit by that quiet, sacred joy only new fathers know. And the baby, her son, had her eyes even then. The same eerie blue-gray that people used to say looked like storm clouds waiting to break. It wasn't just resemblance. It was replication. So when her son finally returned pale and exhausted, it wasn't concern that gripped her. It was resolve. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, holding an envelope in one hand, a tremor running through his jaw. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. "It's not mine," he said, his voice small. "I got the results this morning." He placed the envelope on the table like it might explode. She didn't touch it. Some truths don't need confirmation. They're felt bone deep, like knowing when someone is staring at you in a crowded room. "She used a donor," he whispered. "But she didn't pick him randomly." "No, of course not. She matched him to your features. Height, eye color, blood type, even the jawline." "Was it through a clinic?" He shook his head. "No, it was private. Some online forum. She won't give me the name." That's when the tremor in her hands began. "Do you understand what that means? That child was engineered, not for love, not for legacy, but for control. Maya didn't want a baby. She wanted a pawn, a living, breathing chess piece modeled after the family she married into a psychological anchor she could use to keep her husband from drifting away. You think manipulation comes with shouting with violence? No. Real manipulation comes with dimples and tea in the afternoon, with "I did this for us" and "you should be grateful." She says I have no right to be angry, he continued. Says she carried him for 9 months, raised him in her body. Says biology doesn't matter, only love does. She nodded slowly. But she never gave you a choice. She said I wouldn't have agreed, and she was right, I wouldn't have. The room filled with the silence so thick it felt like smoke. I need to leave, he said. Then do it. I mean, Mom, I don't even know what to do with this kid. He's not mine, but he is mine, you know. She looked at her son, then not as a boy, not as a victim, but as a man who had finally painfully awoken to the life he had sleepwalked into. You don't abandon a child, she said firmly. But you also don't chain yourself to someone who lied to make you stay. He exhaled shakily. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're not him, she said. You're not your father, but you carry his name, his kindness. Don't waste that by shrinking to fit someone's cage. He nodded, tears pooling, but didn't cry, not yet. That evening, she did something she hadn't done in years. She dressed herself in navy, tied her hair back, put on her late husband's wedding ring now hanging from a chain. Then she knocked on Maya's door. The girl answered in leggings and a forced smile. You came to see the baby, she chirped. No, the older woman replied. I came to see you. Maya blinked. Okay. They sat in the living room, child asleep in the other room. The walls were painted beige. The couch was too new, too clean, like no one ever actually lived there. You know what the worst part of all this is? She began softly. It's not the lies. It's the calculation. You didn't get pregnant to build a family. You did it to steal one. Maya's mouth opened in protest, but the older woman raised a hand. No more pretending. You wanted a baby with my face because you thought it would buy you permanence. A child as currency. A face as leverage. Maya's expression hardened. The smile vanished. You're not the only woman who's lost, Maya hissed. You think you own him. You think because you gave birth to him, you're owed something forever. I earned what I have, she said. You forged it. And then the final blow. You named him Elias, thinking it would manipulate me into silence. But I'll tell you something, Maya, the man you tried to mimic with that name, he would have seen through you in 5 minutes. She stood gaze sharp as glass. Don't mistake my silence for weakness. I stayed quiet to see how far you'd go, and now you've gone too far. She left without another word. Let me ask you, have you ever witnessed the moment a woman reclaims her spine, her story, her sword? You just did. 3 days. That's how long it took for Maya to respond. 3 days of silence like the eye of a storm pretending it had passed. But storms don't just disappear, they hide. They wait. And when Maya finally showed up on her doorstep with the baby in a wrap and a look of performance etched into every corner of her face, it was clear she hadn't come to apologize. She'd come to win. I thought maybe we could talk, Maya said softly, cradling the child like a trophy. I know things got heated. And I know you're upset, but we're still family. Still family. She almost laughed. Family is built on truth, the older woman replied, opening the door just wide enough for Maya to step into the threshold, but not further. Not tricks, not strategic pregnancies. Maya's lips quivered, intentional, practiced. He's your grandson. No, he's your son. You made that choice alone. You get to live with it. And there it was. The first crack. Maya's eyes flickered something between panic and disbelief, as if she hadn't imagined a world where the woman in front of her wouldn't fold, wouldn't mother her back into acceptance. You see, Maya was the type who believed that guilt was currency, that if she looked sad enough, fragile enough, people would soften. She had built a house on manipulation, and now it was collapsing. She shifted the baby on her hip. You can't just pretend he doesn't exist. I'm not. I see him. I see what you tried to do with him. But don't confuse blood with bond. You used my dead husband's name. You crafted a face that mimicked my child's eyes. That's not family, Maya. That's forgery. Maya's composure wavered. You're cruel. No, the older woman said, voice low and steady. I'm clear. Maya stepped back. She wasn't used to this version of her mother-in-law, the one who wasn't bending, the one who stood like stone, unmoving, unapologetic. I didn't do this to hurt anyone, Maya offered, like a child caught in a lie. I just didn't want to lose him. He was slipping away. So you trapped him with a child he never agreed to. I gave him a son. No, you gave him a mirror, one you manipulated to look like us. and now you want applause. Tell me how many women get handed a dagger and told it's a bouquet. How many are expected to smile through betrayal because at least there's a baby, or you should be happy you're still included. In that moment, she realized the most devastating weapon Maya had wielded wasn't lies. It was expectation. The expectation that she'd stay quiet, that she'd play nice, that she'd fold into the narrative like a secondary character in someone else's show. Not anymore. You should leave, she said quietly. I'm his wife. For now. Maya's eyes widened. You're trying to break us up. No, Maya, she said, stepping forward, her voice finally carrying the steel it had withheld for too long. You broke yourselves. I'm just not covering it up anymore. The door shut with a finality that echoed down the hall like a closing chapter. Inside, she exhaled. Her body trembled not with fear, but release. She walked back into the house that had held her grief, her silence, her dignity, like a sealed tomb. But today, the air was different, lighter, like it had been scrubbed of the performance. Later that evening, her son returned. He looked weary, but there was something new in his face. Clarity, maybe, or something approaching it. I told her I'm moving out, he said, just for a while. She nodded. She didn't hug him. She didn't say, I told you so. Because sometimes love isn't loud, it's restraint. It's letting someone walk their path without dragging them toward yours. She says you turned me against her. She turned you against you, she replied. I just pointed out the mirror. He sat on the couch like he used to when he was younger, when the world felt safer, when trust hadn't yet been weaponized. He looked around the room at the photos, the chipped vase, the ghost of childhood laughter still living in the floorboards. I don't even know what to do with my life now, he whispered. You start over. And the baby? She didn't answer right away. You love him. But not blindly, she said finally. You don't punish him for her sins, but you also don't pretend her sins don't exist. You be better. That's your job now. And maybe that's the truest test of a parent, not what you protect your children from, but what you teach them to stand against. That night she slept. Not because everything was fixed, but because she was no longer hiding from herself. Somewhere in the house, the roses she thought had died were beginning to bloom. Weeks passed, and with them the silence settled into something else. Not tension, not fear, but space. Sacred, necessary space. The kind of space you only realize you needed once it wraps around you like armor. The son moved into a small apartment downtown, sparse, undecorated, a liminal space between who he had been and who he might become. The child stayed with Maya, at least for now. Custody would come later. So would lawyers. But this wasn't about war anymore. It was about clarity. And clarity doesn't scream, it reveals. The older woman grandmother, by some definitions, returned to her garden. This time, the roses bloomed, one after the other, small blood-red bursts among the green. Proof that even roots neglected too long can revive if someone finally waters them. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't warm. It was cold, clinical, a formal request from Maya's lawyer, citing emotional distress, warning her to cease communication unless it pertained to the child's welfare. She read it once, then again. Her hands didn't tremble. You see, there's a peculiar kind of strength in watching someone try to hurt you after you've stopped giving them the power to. She didn't respond. Not because she was afraid, but because she no longer had anything to prove. Maya wanted attention. She wanted outrage reaction. She wanted to be relevant. But the woman who knows her worth doesn't engage. She watches, then she rises. Instead, she focused on her son. They spoke more now, not in long, emotional conversations, but in quiet, respectful check-ins. He called her for advice. She listened without lecturing. She let him build his own compass. One evening, he brought the baby. No Maya, just him and the boy. He started smiling last week, he said almost shyly. She took the child in her arms and stared into the familiar eyes, her eyes. But something had changed. Where once she saw violation, now she saw potential. The baby blinked at her like he recognized something old and safe. You gave him the name back, she noted. Her son nodded. It didn't feel right. He's Leo now. It fits. She smiled. Not because it was poetic, not because it was neat, but because sometimes freedom comes in small acts of reclamation. A name, a boundary, a single day without apology. She rocked the child gently. You think he'll be okay? Her son asked. He'll be more than okay, she said. He was born from a lie, but raised in truth. That makes all the difference. They sat in silence for a while. The television hummed in the background. Outside dusk pressed against the windows like a soft exhale. The woman looked at the child in her arms, then at her son, and quietly it hit her. All this time she thought the story was about betrayal, about being manipulated, about being erased. But it wasn't. It was about resurfacing. It was about surviving quiet war, about standing tall in a room where someone tried to diminish her, about watching her legacy nearly be stolen and realizing just in time that legacy isn't in blood alone. It's in truth, in resilience, in the way you choose not to disappear. So what would you do, reader, if your son's wife hid a child and presented it like a gift when really it was a trap? Would you rage? Would you crumble? Or would you do what she did? Would you wait? Would you watch? Would you rise? Because now standing in her living room, the baby in her arms, and the scent of fresh roses drifting through the window, she felt no anger, no fear, just presence. She didn't need to control the story anymore. She had reclaimed her place in it. And this time she wasn't asking to be seen. She was the vision. The woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises.